The first challenge is technological, and it's already reshaping daily life for millions of people. The internet, digital currencies, and global communication networks have made it possible for people, money, and information to cross borders with almost no friction. A software developer in Lagos can work full-time for a company headquartered in San Francisco, get paid directly in cryptocurrency, and spend their evenings watching shows produced in Seoul, without ever needing a visa, a work permit, or even leaving their apartment. That blurs the line between national identity and economic control in a way that simply didn't exist a generation ago. El Salvador took this even further, becoming the first country to make Bitcoin legal tender back in 2021, effectively inviting a currency no government controls directly into its national economy. The traditional nation-state was built on a simple idea: clear borders, sovereign control over territory, and a monopoly on legitimate violence within that territory. That model worked reasonably well for centuries. But right now, it's facing unprecedented pressure from multiple directions at once, and none of these pressures are temporary. The first challenge is technological, and it's already reshaping daily life for millions of people. The internet, digital currencies, and global communication networks have made it possible for people, money, and information to cross borders with almost no friction. A software developer in Lagos can work full-time for a company headquartered in San Francisco, get paid directly in cryptocurrency, and spend their evenings watching shows produced in Seoul, without ever needing a visa, a work permit, or even leaving their apartment. That blurs the line between national identity and economic control in a way that simply didn't exist a generation ago. El Salvador took this even further, becoming the first country to make Bitcoin legal tender back in 2021, effectively inviting a currency no government controls directly into its national economy. Whether or not that specific experiment succeeds long-term, it signaled something important. Money itself is no longer something only governments get to define. The second major challenge is climate change, and the scale of it is honestly staggering once you look at the numbers. According to the World Bank, if the climate crisis is left unchecked, as many as 216 million people could become internal climate migrants by 2050, forced to move within their own countries because of rising seas, drought, or extreme weather. And this isn't some distant future problem. The latest World Migration Report found that more than 83 million people were already living in internal displacement by the end of 2024, the highest number ever recorded, more than double what it was just over a decade ago, with nearly 46 million of those displacements linked directly to disasters. Rising sea levels, extreme weather, and resource scarcity are creating a category of people the law barely knows how to handle, and forcing nations to confront problems that simply don't respect the borders drawn onto a map. The third challenge is the rise of powerful non-state actors. Tech giants, international organizations, criminal networks, and global NGOs now wield influence that often rivals, or in some cases exceeds, that of many nation-states. Some of the world's largest technology companies have market valuations bigger than the entire GDP of most countries on Earth, and they can shape what billions of people see, believe, and buy without a single vote ever being cast. Put these three forces together: technology, climate change, and powerful non-state actors, and you get a world where traditional sovereignty is becoming more theoretical than practical. Countries are losing meaningful control over their economies, their information environments, their populations, and in some cases, even their physical territory. This erosion of state power isn't happening evenly, and that unevenness is exactly what makes it dangerous. Strong states with advanced technology and robust institutions are far better positioned to adapt. Weaker states are struggling badly, and the gap between powerful and vulnerable nations is widening in ways that could destabilize entire regions. A country with the resources to build climate-resilient infrastructure and digital governance systems can absorb these shocks. A country without those resources risks losing its grip on its own economy and territory at the exact same time its population is under the most pressure. The rise of digital currencies and decentralized finance is particularly disruptive to something governments have taken for granted for centuries: monetary sovereignty. When citizens can hold and transact in Bitcoin, stablecoins, or other digital assets outside direct government control, the state's ability to manage its own currency and economy is genuinely diminished. That has real implications for taxation, regulation, and monetary policy, three of the core tools governments have always used to steer their economies. Global supply chains and just-in-time manufacturing compound the problem, making nations deeply dependent on each other in ways that limit their autonomy. A disruption in one part of the world, a blocked shipping lane, a factory shutdown, a natural disaster can cascade into shortages and economic pain thousands of miles away within days. Climate-induced migration is also creating new political tensions as countries grapple with how to manage large movements of people across borders. tensions that are only going to intensify as the World Bank's projections play out over the coming decades. And the concept of citizenship itself is being challenged in ways that would have seemed strange a generation ago. Dual citizenship, remote work digital nomads, and the rise of self-described global citizens are making traditional national loyalty far more fluid. Dozens of countries, from Portugal and Estonia to Costa Rica and Indonesia, now offer dedicated digital nomad visas specifically designed for people who want to live somewhere without working for that country's economy at all. Some futurists go even further, arguing we're moving toward a world of network states, or charter cities, experimental projects like Prospera in Honduras, where governance becomes more voluntary and modular, almost like subscribing to a service rather than being born into a fixed system. The implications for democracy and human rights here are genuinely complicated, and this is where reasonable people disagree sharply. On one hand, the decline of the nation-state could lead to more freedom and innovation, as individuals and communities gain more real choice over how they're governed instead of being stuck with whatever system they happen to be born into. On the other hand, it could just as easily lead to new forms of corporate or algorithmic governance that lack any democratic accountability at all, where the citizens of a network state or a platform are really just users, with no vote and no real recourse if the rules change. Both futures are on the table right now, and which one we get isn't decided yet. The transition period is likely to be genuinely turbulent. Powerful states will fight hard to maintain their authority, even as new forms of organization emerge around and underneath them. International law and institutions that were designed for a world of clearly sovereign nation-states are struggling to adapt to this new reality, and there's no updated rulebook waiting in the wings to replace the old one cleanly. The quiet end of the nation-state doesn't mean the end of governance or order. It means the evolution of governance into new forms that most of us are only beginning to understand. The coming decades will determine whether this transformation leads to greater human flourishing, with more freedom and better adapted institutions, or to new forms of instability and inequality that fall hardest on the people with the fewest resources to adapt. This is one of the most important stories of our time, even though it's unfolding largely out of sight, in server rooms, currency markets, and climate reports rather than on the evening news. What do you think? Does a world of overlapping voluntary governance sound like more freedom, or like the slow disappearance of any government you can actually hold accountable? Let me know in the comments, and if this changed how you think about the world you live in, subscribe, because this transformation is only just getting started.